All right, so we've been talking a bit about the tech component of this grand cultural war that's going on. You guys, Quillette, you're a small company. You're funded on Patreon, which we're funded on Patreon. It's pretty awesome. You have people that voluntarily pay you to support your content and make you grow. I know how validating and rewarding it is and all that stuff. But you find yourself often up against the big boys, right? Like Vox, funded to hundreds of millions of dollars by different things, and you're being critical of them here. So it does get me back to something that I started with before about where does it come from for you to just be brave? I don't want to belittle that part of it, that there's a new internet developing, and I think it is people that are doing this sort of thing. It's not these well-funded, well-oiled machines that we're watching them crumble, you know? You sent me this morning this thing about Vox's ad rev is off by 15% or something. And it's like, we've got slim trim companies, and I really believe that's the future economically of this, as well as in terms of protecting the ideas.
Yeah. So we have a pretty amazing story. I started by myself, and I ran the website for maybe a year or even a year and a half before I got my assistant editor on board, who's now sort of the managing editor, and he's extraordinarily talented, extremely hardworking. So I'm very indebted to him for all of the work.
That's Jonathan?
Jonathan K. And my other editor, Jamie.
Okay. Jamie Palmer. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's give credit where credit's due.
Yeah. Okay. And my contributors are also amazing. Yeah. But we are hit now, as of 2018 September, we're getting up to 1 million unique visitors a month with a staff of, all part-time staff of there's 6 or 7 people. And we're getting almost 1 million uniques a month. I am aware of magazines that have a budget of millions of dollars that cannot compete with our traffic and who have staffing capacity of 30, 40, 50 people. So we're extremely lean, but we're hardworking, and we're nimble and innovative. Like I'm always thinking about innovations to the business model. What can we do that's different? I think just following in the footsteps of the old model is probably a recipe for failure. And I truly believe that advertising is on the way out. I know people can still make some money through advertising, but I think advertising gives you a vulnerability, because now you see these activists trying to target brands if their brand is next to some content that activists don't like. So I think advertising is just, there's a vulnerability associated with it, and
is it almost a fake vulnerability though? Because I always think when they always try to boycott Hannity, for example, and it's like all of the people trying to boycott him, like putting aside whatever he said on that given instance, they don't watch him in the first place, and yet the advertisers still feel that they have to bow to the mob. And I always find that to be a strange thing. Like, there's very few people who like Hannity who are so shocked by something he said that then want to boycott him. It's always people who hate him in the first place that don't watch. So there's an odd piece of this that's like slightly disconnected from reality, I think.
Well, corporations and companies in general are skittish and conservative, and they want to protect their reputations, and they're afraid of any kind of controversy. And I agree with you that these activists on social media who are targeting companies, they're a tiny, tiny minority of the population. Most people don't care or buy into this stuff, but corporations, it's probably some PR person who's like, whoa, we don't want any controversy. Let's detach ourselves. But, that kind of timidity and lack of strength and lack of spine is not something that is part of Quillette. So we very much are conscious of, if we ever get mobbed, and we do get mobbed sometimes, we don't apologize. We don't give in to the heckler's veto, basically. And I really think it's important for corporations, company leaders, anyone in a leadership position to grow a spine in the era of social media and to not take any of this outrage seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not take it seriously or not take it, I mean, I think we have to take it seriously because it is sort of infecting a lot of society, but maybe not take it as if it's necessarily right just because it's outrage. Is that fair?
Yeah, you can see the recent example, an editor of the New York Review of Books, Ian Baroma, was fired because he published an article by a Canadian radio journalist who was credibly accused of many cases of sexual assault. And I think the radio journalist was like, is a bad dude. But the editor was sacked for publishing his article within like the space of 2 days or something. So there was a social media outrage phenomenon, and it's all wrapped up with Me Too. And then he's just fired just like that. And it's like, okay, take some time out to consider it. Like, listen to the feedback from your readers or from people on social media. But when did we start making decisions so suddenly, these important decisions that affect people's livelihoods? That's what I find astonishing, that people in leadership positions just sort of throw all caution to the wind and just say, okay, we're going to sack someone because some people on Twitter are unhappy.
Yeah, and also the guilt by association part of this, right? I mean, it's possible for a slim trim operation that you have, you might find out in 10 years, you might find out that one of the guys you're working with now 3 years ago did something awful.
Yeah.
And then they'll use that to try to tar you. And the danger in that, or that you sat down with somebody and now we can put out a chart that links that person to this person to that person, this one. Where in an age of the internet, within 6 steps, you can link anybody to Kevin Bacon or Barack Obama. It's like, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. Look, guilt by association is, I mean, it's a fallacy, but it is powerful, and we do find ourselves tainted, and it's tricky, and I think we have to, every situation we have to judge on a case-by-case basis. And you're probably right, it probably is going to happen, but I trust my readers, and I feel like they know who we are, they're aware of our values, and they can make the appropriate judgments at the time.
Yeah, so all right, so even though we've spent most of the time here and most of the things that you guys are writing talking about what's sort of going on with the modern left and the frustrations that everyone knows that I have with these guys, let's talk about the parts of the right that you actually find scary or untoward or whatever you want to call it. What do you think the alt-right is at this point? Like if someone says to you, give me the definition of alt-right, what does that even mean to you at this point?
Well, I consider them to be the white nationalists that are that want an ethno-state, and they're pretty morally repugnant, and they're pretty scary, and they engage in quite vicious trolling. They send death threats. The journalist Kathy Young, for example, was one of the first people to write an article criticising the bigotry of the alt-right, and she had death threat called into her home. And they're pretty scary, but I think they're a small group.
Yeah, how are we able to quantify that? Because that's one of the things that, like, I think people are just very confused at. They're making it seem, the media makes it seem, because they call everyone alt-right or far-right, that there's this massive group. I can only talk about this in an American lens, but maybe it's a little different in Australia, but that there's this massive group of white nationalists who are coming to turn America into some sort of ethno-state. Now, I'm not saying there aren't racists. Of course there are racists, and of course there are bad people and people using these tactics. But I believe it's just a tiny sliver. And then on top of that, you have all sort of the meme makers and the shit posters and the rest of it. Those guys, you may not like what they do, but they're having fun in their eyes in a lot of ways. They're not just the evil racist component of this.
I think a mistake was made back when Milo was around, and I think he started using the term alt-right, and he might not have been aware of where that term originated, and it actually originated with the white nationalists. And
so you think Milo was using it more in the way that I just laid it out, of just sort of these shit posting meme maker something without acknowledging the other piece.
I don't know if he was aware of where the term originated or not, but it was a huge error for people who are just into shit posting. It was a huge error for them to use that label for themselves, because unless you're a white, in my view, unless you are a white nationalist, you're not an alt-righter. I mean, the label I think came about in 2007, and I think it was Richard Spencer who created the alt-right journal or something. So it was a big mistake for people who just want to have fun online and who want to, just like push back against some of these PC orthodoxies. It was a huge mistake for them to use the term for themselves, and that's given license now for critics to apply the term on everybody who pushes back against PC dogmas, and that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
But, we have to just say it over and over again, like, these people are repugnant, and we don't want to have anything to do with their ideology. The ideology is authoritarian, it's racist, it's and they engage in very scary, vicious behaviours.
Yeah, so absolutely, I will co-sign all of that, just for the record. Of course, this is a repugnant ideology and these people are racist and all those things. So I'm less concerned about that because I do believe it's a small sliver that doesn't have real institutional power. Now, maybe it's going to gain some, and I think there's evidence that, at least in Eastern Europe, that some of these ideas, partly as a pushback to the immigration problems, that maybe it is gaining some power. But are you concerned that it has a bigger institutional power? Because I think the stuff that we're often talking about is because we're worried about institutional power and structural power, not just that there are mean and bad people out there, which, yes, there are mean and bad people out there, and there will always be mean and bad people out there.
Yeah. Because my background is so recently in academia, I focus a lot on universities and the ideologies that are popular within universities, so that makes me focus on left-wing ideologies such as critical theory, post-structuralism and Marxism. If I was in a different context, I might focus more on right-wing ideologies and the effect that they have on institutions, and I'm sure...
So you're giving a little nod to the postmodernists there, because you're showing that your own bias is a little part of how you look at things, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I'm sure if I was closer to institutions that have more of a right-wing ideological influence, I would be criticising those influences more.
Yeah.
Being Australian is, in Australia, our conservative or right-wing ideologies are quite different to America. So you probably already know this, but we have universal health care, we have gun control, we have a welfare state. So if I lived in a country where we didn't have those things, I would probably be advocating for them.
Right.
But, a lot of this is context specific, and you criticise what you know. So a part of the reason why I criticise the what Jordan Peterson calls postmodern neo-Marxism is because I've experienced it, I see it all of the time in academic settings, and I worry about the impact that ideology is having on media, the law, and just the broader culture.
Yeah. Are you hopeful that some of the good ideas that we've talked about here are going to win out? That seems to be one of the biggest questions I get at public events now. Like, I think there is a sense that we've woken up a certain amount of people, this Peterson tour selling out every theater, thousands and thousands of people literally all over the world. Will be in February in Australia in February. But I think there's still a concern of how much worse can it get before it gets better?
Yeah, and that's a question people ask me as well, and I don't have an oracle. I can't see the future, and all I can say is that I'm doing my very best to counter these bad ideas, and that it's actually anybody who's concerned, I mean, they have some responsibility. And I think everybody should think about sharing the risk. So, you know, when Charlie...
we need these people, truly, right?
Yeah. You know, when Charlie Hebdo happened and the mainstream media in Europe and the UK and America, I think, didn't want to publish that cartoon of Muhammad, which got those men and women killed, Douglas Murray came out and said, do it. Share the risk.
That's when I came aware of Douglas. It's one of his best moments. It's incredible. It's on YouTube. People can find it.
That was something that impacted me a lot as well. And, you know, anyone who's concerned about the way our culture, broader Western culture is headed, needs to think deeply about how they can make a little bit of difference by sharing the risk. Just speaking honestly in conversations with friends, speaking honestly and openly in the workplace, normalizing conversations, and just taking on a little bit of risk.
Yeah, what does that tell you about the slide that has occurred in the West? Is this just is it an infection of success or something, that we could be so successful that even taking a little risk seems awful to people?
Humans are very conformist, and most people are cowards, unfortunately. And a lot of what we're talking about, these bad ideas that are being promoted, are only promoted by a tiny, tiny minority of people, but they're very noisy, loud, and aggressive. And the problem is simply the silent majority not feeling too intimidated to sort of push back. And if we can encourage those who are in the silent majority to push back against ideologues on both sides, both the hard right and the hard left, I think we will create a much healthier civil society.
Yeah.
But it's about empowering the moderates to speak freely, speak openly, and not feel afraid, like ashamed of their moderate views.
Right. They've also turned words like civility and moderation are thought of as bad now.
Yeah,
like, you're a fence sitter. You don't want to murder half the people. You know, you're not Thanos from Avengers. You must be evil.
Yeah. I mean, those people who argue that civility is a bad thing, and
we see a lot of this now, by the way, that civility is a bad thing. A lot of think pieces about this.
Well, I would argue that's unrepresentative of the broader population. I know that media and certain parts of media and universities have been captured by cultists in a way, and they have these crazy ideas, but I would be careful about generalizing those ideas to the broader population, because I think most normal people are pretty chill.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't spent enough time in your country to know.
No, I think you are right. I mean, I'm out there going across the country realizing that there are so many just decent, good people.
Yeah.
The hysterics and the way that I said earlier about how social media has leaked into reality or something.
Yeah.
It's making everyone feel crazy, but I am meeting these incredible people all over the country that they just want to live and let live. And maybe, I don't know your feelings on abortion, for example. Maybe we agree, maybe we don't. It just seems, that actually seems irrelevant at the moment.
Yeah.
That sort of says something we touched on briefly right before we started, that politics, I was saying how I'm not that interested in politics per se at the moment, even though this is all framed within a political lens, that I'm much more interested in culture.
Yeah.
Is that how you feel about this? And was that always how you felt about this, or has something shifted?
Definitely. I've never been particularly interested in partisan politics, but I think that politics is downstream of culture. So the ideas that are popular within a culture then get reflected in your politics. So if you want politics to be a certain way and to be a bit healthier and less dysfunctional, you want to impact the culture first, because culture is bigger than politics.
Yeah. Is there a danger that we're just in this like locked culture war now, so that our politics can never get better? Like we sort of have this authoritarian leftism, and now we've got Trump. These are the cultural fights that we're having. Now there's a couple of us in this spot, right?
Yeah.
But like that if all politics is going to come from those two things at the moment,
Yeah.
then politics sort of is almost irreparably damaged.
Yeah, look, I don't know what the future holds for the United States. From an outsider looking in, it does look quite scary. That the level of tribalism that seems apparent, and the amount of hate and distrust that each side has for the other, it's quite scary. I just hope that if the worst happens to the United States, we will have outposts where Western civilization survives and thrives. New Zealand, Australia.
So basically, going back to what I said at the beginning, it's good to be surrounded by water.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
We'll be an outpost.
Yeah.
And we'll
You
keep.
got extra room at your house?
Yeah, we're gonna keep.
I don't need that much room.
Yeah.
A couple feet worth.
Yeah. A lot of people are going to New Zealand and buying houses there in case the worst happens. So.
Oh God, I don't want to end on this terrible note here. Wait, we've got to bring this back. But all right, so there's concern about that.
Yeah.
Of course, right, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, you could
Yeah.
look at all of these ideas that I truly think are the ideas that could unravel Western society and free thought and all those things. That's why I talk about them so much. But there is a counter, and then that's what we got to keep doing. So bring me home on a positive note, please, before people start buying real estate in New Zealand. Or you were just trying to help the market in Australia there.
No, we don't need any help in the housing market. I'm optimistic because I see the positive reception that I get through Quillette. Our audience grows every month. More and more people are contributing to our website, feeling brave enough to write their thoughts down and send it through. And the thing is, every individual has the power to change the world of ideas. If you've got an idea and you can articulate it and write it down and send it in, or articulate it in some other fashion, you do have the power to transform and impact this culture and to make a huge difference. So that's incredible, and that makes me feel happy and optimistic.
All right, that is how we can end it. We can't end it on the seasteading, we're going to be in water world kind of thing. For more on Claire's work, check out Quillette.com, and they are also on Patreon.